Go ahead and open up your Bibles to 2 Samuel chapter 21, 2 Samuel chapter 21, and I'm going to meet you there in just a moment. I forgot to mention this morning, and I want to get everybody geared up for it, and we need to announce it every day until it comes, every time we meet, and that is we're going to be having our second annual lectureship. The elders had decided, because of the evangelism efforts that we've been having, to go ahead and make that event more evangelistically minded. And so some of the lessons are geared more towards bringing people in. In particular, on Sunday of that meeting, which you can see, we've got the flyers up everywhere, but on Sunday of that meeting, we are going to have more of those evangelistic lessons in that one day. And those would be great lessons to bring anybody who is not a Christian, and they can hear those lessons. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to be having a potluck on that day, and so that's going to be May 4th. But also, we're going to have something else, and it's going to be a big push for all of us, and we need everybody to be involved in this. And we're going to have an additional effort on that Sunday that we're going to call Maximum Capacity Sunday. What we're going to do is you're going to invite everybody that you can, and we're going to try to fill this building for at least this one day. Now, it's going to be great because of the evangelistic efforts we got going on and the lessons for that day, that if you had people that were not Christians, that's going to maximize that effort. But we want to bring in as many people as possible. You got friends, family. Doesn't matter if they're members of the church or not. That's the push for this, is just to get a full building. We want to have that full building so we can, be encouraged, and we can take a picture of us with a full auditorium and dream those dreams of reaching out to the lost and filling this auditorium with brand new Christians, and that's what we want. And so anyway, again, we're going to do Maximum Capacity Sunday. Everybody that you know, if we have to put chairs in the hallways, that's fine. We'll do it. We'll do whatever we have to do. But yeah, please participate in that and invite everybody that you know. And, they can stay for the potluck, and we'll just have a good day. And so anyway, I wanted to make mention of that, meant to say that this morning. We need to keep remembering that, and I know that that's something that we need to keep in our announcements. And so anyway, Lori, write that down if you haven't already and put it in the bulletin. So we just need to get that out as much as possible. All right, we are in chapter 21 here, and we are back to fighting giants. This is actually not as prevalent as what we see when you're in 1 Samuel chapter 17 when David fights Goliath, but there are more giants to fight. We're going to get to that at the end of this chapter, and so you can look forward to that. But the very first thing that we see here is that there is a famine. So let's look at the famine, verses 1 through 3. It says, "And there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year, and David sought the face of Jehovah. And Jehovah said, 'It is for Saul and for his bloody house, because he put to death the Gibeonites.'" Now, if you are trying to recall when this happened, you're joining everybody else, okay? Because this is not recorded in the Bible. This is the only instance that we know of. Now, some people go, well, why is that? Well, it's just because, we have the pertinent facts. We don't have all these details. Really, you only get a snapshot of David's life. We read David's life within a few pages. Do you think that you could write your own biography and fill up more than a few pages? You could, right? You could fill up that book, for 200 pages or more of just things, stories that you can remember. These are just little snapshots, and so we don't have every little detail, and this is one that has been left out, but the ramifications have not been left out. And we'll come back to that later, but this has not been recorded in the scriptures other than the famine is because of this. Now, there's something else I'd like to make mention of. If you look back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, when you look at Deuteronomy 28, and I'm going to go there and read this for myself here, but verses 15 through I think it is 22 says this, But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Jehovah thy God, so this is in following a king here, but in other things. But if you observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. 16, cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy kneading trough. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, the increase of thy cattle, and the young of thy flock. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in. Cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. Jehovah will send upon thee cursing, discomfiture, and rebuke, and all that thou puttest thy hands unto do, until thou be destroyed, until thou perish quickly, because of the evil of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Jehovah will make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest in to possess it. Jehovah will smite thee with a consumption, and with fever, and with inflammation, and with fiery heat, and with a sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. Now, this is not the only time that we see things like this. Of course, whenever we went back and we talked about this, what was that, Deuteronomy chapter 17, when you have the king, and what's the king supposed to do? The king's supposed to sit down and write the law, and he's supposed to understand it. And you go back even into 1 Samuel, when Samuel is upset that the people are asking for a king to begin with, and then God says, you know what, I'll give you a king, and I'll give you everything that goes with a king. And guess what? If the king causes you to sin, well, guess what? Well, I'm gonna punish the entirety of you. And so there's several times where God does this. This is not just a one-time thing. Verse 2, it says, and the king called the Gibeonites and said unto them, now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites, and the children of Israel had sworn unto them, and Saul sought to slay them in the zeal for the children of Israel and Judah. And David said unto the Gibeonites, what shall I do for you, and wherewith shall I make atonement, that ye may bless the inheritance of Jehovah? And so this is David trying to make things right. So let's look at this next part. Let's look at retribution against Saul. And the Gibeonites said unto him, it is no matter of silver or gold between us and Saul or his house, neither is it for us to put any man to death in Israel. And he said, what ye shall say, that will I do for you. So he said, look, we don't want money. We don't want to go to war. We don't want to kill the people of Israel. That's just not in our plans. And he said, well, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Okay, well, here's what they want. And they said unto the king, the man that consumed us and that devised against us, that we should be destroyed from remaining in any of the borders of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be delivered unto us, and we will hang them up unto Jehovah in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of Jehovah. And the king said, I will give them. Now, what they asked for is from the sons of Saul. This is it. We want some of the children of Saul here, and so this is kind of an interesting thing. When you had in the Old Testament the idea of retribution, that in Leviticus chapter 24 verses 17 through 22, you see that if a man takes the life of another man, his life shall be taken, a life for a life here, and so this is not quite the same thing. It looks like because they cannot take the life of Saul, well then, in order to take the life of Saul completely, you take 7, that complete number, you take 7 of his children, and you take their lives. Okay, moving on, verse 7. There's some tricky language here, as far as some names are concerned, and we're going to explain that in just a second. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul. Okay, so Mephibosheth we get, this is the whole story for Mephibosheth throughout, is that this is Jonathan's son. Remember, David made the promise to Jonathan. I don't think he even had to make that promise. He was going to do it anyway. But anyway, he's made this promise to Jonathan that he would take care of his household. And that is exactly what he does. So he's not going to take the life of Mephibosheth. So he spares Mephibosheth. And verse 7, because of Jehovah's oath that was between them, between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul. Verse 8, but the king took the two sons of Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, whom she bare unto Saul, Armani and Mephibosheth. Okay, this is a different person. This is Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, not the grandson of Saul. When you look at the other passage, when we look at the verse before, this is Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, and this would be Mephibosheth, the son of Saul. So this would be his uncle. And then it says, and the 5 sons of Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she bare to Adriel, the son of Barzillai, the Mahalathite. Look at this. This is another one. In verse 8, it says, Michal, the daughter of Saul. This is a transcription error. And in the Hebrew, this is Merab. And this is Merab. But Michal, how do we know that this is not Michal? Well, also from 2 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 23, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children unto the day of her death. Remember, this was back in the beginning of the 2 Samuel that David had come in and he was dancing before the ark and he had taken off his kingly garments, and she went extreme on that, and he lost favor with her at that point, and God does this to her. Michal does not ever get to have children. And so this is not Michal. This should be Merab. This is a transcription error, and that's all it is. Moving on, verse 9. And he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and they hanged them in the mountain before Jehovah, and they fell all 7 together, and they were put to death in the days of harvest, in the first days, at the beginning of barley harvest. And so, for those of you that are kind of nerdy and want to know when this is, because I'm right there with you. This is April or May. So April to May is the barley harvest. All right, let's look at Rizpah here. Verses 10 through 14. And Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it for her upon the rock from the beginning of harvest until water was poured upon them from heaven. And she suffered neither the birds of the heavens to rest on them by day, nor the beasts of the field by night. And it was told David what Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done. And David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh-Gilead, who had stolen them from the street of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them, in the day that the Philistines slew Saul in Gilboa. And he brought up from thence the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, and they gathered the bones of them that were hanged. And they buried the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son in the country of Benjamin and Zelah, in the sepulchre of Kish his father. And they performed all that the king commanded, and after that God was entreated for the land. And so what happens here, this is not really spelled out in this way, but Rizpah is, of course, protecting her children by, driving off the beasts of the field at night and driving away the birds that would come, think like ravens and things, vultures that might come and try to pick at the bodies. And so every day and night she was scaring these things off. She's getting rid of them. And so what David does is he's moved by this, and he hears about it. And so he goes ahead and he takes the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan and gives them a proper burial. This is in relation to this. And so anyway, that's kind of I've heard some lessons just on Rizpah before, and you can kind of dig deep into this, but this is a woman that is grieving for her children, and any woman could understand this in particular. Men can understand this as well, but it's a different relationship here with women and their children. And so she is for several days doing this for a long period of time. All right, verses 15 through 22. This is the end of this, and then we'll make some application here before too long. This is fighting giants. This is kind of interesting stuff here. And the Philistines had war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him, and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. And Ishbosheth, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, succored him and smote the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David sware unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, that thou quench not the lamp out of Israel. So this is pretty neat stuff when you start thinking about it, because this gets like a little snapshot again. There's all these different fights going on in the last part of the chapter. Not like you see before when you go to 1 Samuel 17, David is fighting Goliath, and there's a big to-do about it, right? There's a lot leading up to it. It happens. There's some talk about it afterwards. So much that they talk about a few chapters later with David wanting Goliath's sword. And there's interesting things going on like that. But this is just plopped down right here, and then that's it. You don't see much else. But so David is fighting with his servants, and I kind of wonder, while I'm thinking about this, if you go back and you go back to when David has his affair with Bathsheba, what's the problem there? What starts the whole thing? That's when all the men go off to battle, and he's at home. All the men are off to war, and he stays home. He's not fighting, and that's when he gets himself in trouble. Well, guess what? Looks like he's learned that lesson to me, right? He is right where he's supposed to be. He's getting older now, but he is right in the thick of things. And here is Ishbosheth, and he is going to try to kill David. He looks and he goes, all right, I got some easy pickings. And so he goes over to kill him. And then Abishai, it says that Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, succored him. So it's it's kind of one of those things like, hey, why don't you come pick on me for a second, kind of a thing. He's getting in the way of David, and he's going to pick a fight with the giant. And so this is interesting. So he succors him, and then he kills this Philistine giant. So anyway, looking at this, in 2 Samuel 23, verses 18 and 19, this is where the mighty man, we're going to come back to this passage in a couple of weeks, but this talks about Abishai. It says, And Abishai, the brother of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief of the three, and he lifted up his spear against 300 and slew them, and had a name among the three. Was he not most honorable of the three? Therefore he was made their captain. Howbeit, he attained not unto the first three. And so, there's more to this man other than this fight right here. But of course, the sons of Zeruiah end up being pretty rough and tough people. I just keep thinking about that. I know I've said this before, but it's funny. Zeruiah is the sister of David, and he keeps calling them the sons of Zeruiah, almost like, man, my sister's kids. Wow, And, you've been there if you've had a sister that maybe wasn't doing that great of a job at a time, or you thought they needed to do something else, and you're like, wow, really? And here these men, I kind of wonder, when I was in school, if you said, your mama wears combat boots, that was kind of that was kind of a thing that you don't say, right? You don't do that, right? Don't say that. Did anybody? I see some smiles. I wonder if that was some kind of a thing too. But your mom is so fat, and your mama wears combat boots. Those things were You don't say those things. Those were fighting words. But I'm pretty sure Zeruiah wore combat boots. I don't know, because her boys were rough, and I don't know what else to say about that. Maybe she was the sweetest person ever and never disciplined. I don't know. But she has made a name for herself by her sons. But Abishai is one of these mighty men. Moving on, verse 18. And it came to pass, I forgot to mention this. So the men of David, after this, in verse 17, they're like, David, you're not coming out with us anymore, And the reason for that is David is a lamp to the people. He is a light to the people. We're not going to let that light go out. We want to shine. We're going to keep him safe. And so no more fighting, okay? No more of that. All right, verse 18. And it came to pass after this that there was again war with the Philistines of Gob. Then Shebbekai the Hushathite slew Saph, who was one of the sons of the giant. And there was again war with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan, the son of Jerugim, the Bethlehemite, slew Goliath the Gittite. Now, this is, again, another scribal error. As we look at this, not only do we see other things in the scripture here, but when you look at 1 Chronicles 20 and verse 5, again, it just relays David did this. In verse 20, and there was again war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. So here you go, people. If you are a Princess Bride fan, here is the 6-fingered man. Okay, there's actually a name for this condition, and no kidding, I looked it up, but there's a name for this condition, and it's called hexadigitization. Yeah, it's kind of when you have more than the one digit there. You got add to the 5 fingers, and you got hexadigitation. Verse 21, and when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, this is in other places. This is Shimei, not to be confused with a Shimei before, but this is a different person. But this is Shimei. You see it in a couple of different places, Shimei. David's brother slew him. So Shimei, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother slew him. So this is the person's name is Jonathan. He's the nephew of David. And these 4 were born to the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. And so, they name all this off and say, listen, here are all these men of great stature, and they all died by either David or his men. All right, let's get into some lessons learned. I want to point out one in particular, because I think about this one sometimes, and I try to give this lesson, and this is the perfect verse for it, and I just realized it. And so we can suffer for other people's mistakes or sin, and how do we see this? Go back to verse 1. Look at verse 1. It says, there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year, and David sought the face of Jehovah, and Jehovah said, it is for Saul and for his bloody house. And so, it's because of Saul that this happens. So when you look at all this, until I get everybody's attention again, it's not even the worst, okay? That's not even the worst of it. I'll stop for just a second. There was a time where I was preaching, and this child started screaming. And normally I don't hear children, and this child started screaming, and I just thought, for the life of everybody in this room, someone just spanked that child, They were just screaming, and and this was just not a nice child, and the parents were very neglectful about this child, and then I just stopped. I just stopped and waited and said, you know what, whenever we're done here, I'll start back up. And it was, listen, if you think that was mean, you had to be there. It was egregious, okay? It was egregious. But anyway, let's get back into this. Let's look at this. So we can suffer for other people's mistakes. And look at verse 1 again. Jehovah said, it is for Saul. The famine was because Saul had done something. All these people are suffering because of Saul. That's not what people want to tell you, is it, though? They want to say, well, you know what? God wouldn't do that. God wouldn't let you suffer because of somebody else. Well, tell that to the person that is now a quadriplegic because a drunk driver hit them. That is very much the case. You can suffer for other people's mistakes. You can suffer for other people's sin. And that is what's going on here. I think that's such an important lesson for us. It's we are not going to suffer eternally for somebody else. The soul that sinneth, it shall die, Ezekiel 18:20. But we know that in this life we can suffer and it not be our fault. We can suffer for other people and what they've done. All right, another thing here. See, it is for Saul and it is for his bloody house. All right, sometimes you just have to fight giants. You just have to do it, Sometimes things seem like they're stacked against you. And when you think about things like this, spiritually speaking, you've got to remember what everybody else has done when facing hard tasks. What do? They keep their faith in God. That's what they do. That's what we need to do. And we know that also there's something else here. You just don't need to back down. If it's the right thing to do, you don't back down. You don't compromise. There's sometimes that it is right and good for us to compromise. Sometimes we can go, hey, you know what? This doesn't matter. I'm not going to worry about this because it does not matter. And there may be things like that. I've been a part of congregations, and they were getting new carpet in, and you'd have this. Listen, I know at times we've talked about new carpet, but let me tell you what I've seen here, people. All right, I've seen the other side of this, and they laid out all these samples of the carpet out in the foyer, and then they were just, which one do you want? Like check off, and it was like a majority vote on this. And you know what? So many women got so mad. Like, are you kidding? They picked that carpet. They picked that carpet. And it's like, listen, in the grand scheme of things, does that really matter? Does it? I mean, listen, I will tell you right now, if we did LSU purple and gold, eventually I'm going to have to look for another place to preach, okay? But you want to run me out of this pulpit, you know what to do now. But listen, I'm just kidding about that, of course. It just really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so, yeah, it might be an eyesore, but guess what? One of the places where I grew up had red carpet from the 60s for I don't know how long. Red carpet, red pews, dark wood on the sides. It was something else, okay? But whenever they sold that building and built another building, you know what everybody did? They went in and cut a piece of the carpet. They took it with them. No kidding. And someone called me up and said, hey, do you want a piece of this carpet? And I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. But listen, those things don't matter. Compromise on things that don't matter. But when things matter, you never compromise. You never compromise for an instance, not for 1 second when it comes to truth. Never compromise on truth. You know, there will be people that will try to make you do that. They'll try to say, well, you know what? Are you telling me that a loving God is going to send people to hell? Well, you know what? You can answer that however you want. You could say, sure, yeah, I've done that before. You know what I would say is that he only sends people who choose that. There you go. You know, if you choose hell, you're going to get that. But don't compromise. Don't compromise. There have been times where I've tried to study with people and they wouldn't study and then they pass away before I could ever get to study. And people want to say, well, you know what? Maybe they're saved anyway. Listen, we can't compromise on truth, no matter how hard it hurts. And that could be some of the people that we love the most. We just do not compromise. Listen, God's word is truth, and we need to hold fast to it. Brethren, if there's anybody here tonight that has not been faithful to the Lord, if you've not yet become a Christian, you'd like to do that, we'd be glad to help you out with that and sit down and study with you. If you're a Christian that has not been faithful, then please make things right with God. Make things right tonight. And please come as we stand and as we sing.
Say